Hi everyone. I have privilege to have an opportunity to interact with the participants of online workshop on research methodology organized by Department of Social Work, University of Mysore, and I have been given a topic to discuss uh, data processing in social science research. At the outset, I thank the chairman of the department, Dr. Chandramouli sir, Dr. Jyoti ma'am, and other organizers, Dr. Sandhya, Dr. Siddhappa, for giving me this opportunity. Data processing in social science research is one of the practical based, very important topics to be known to all the research scholars, because the knowledge and understanding and practice of data processing in the social science researchers help to maintain the quality of research. My discussion is based on my own experiences as a research scholar, research supervisor, conducting several research projects, and what experience I have had in processing the data in handling different projects. I will be sharing my own experiences with you all. I have planned my interaction uh, in 5 important aspects pertaining to the topic given to me, that is data processing or electronic data processing. First part of my presentation will be on data processing in social science research. So how important data processing in social science research and in social work research. Second part of my presentation will be on the different steps involved in data processing. You all might have read about the process or stages of doing research. In the process of research, data processing is one of the important steps. Within data processing, there are certain established steps which need to be followed for doing data processing scientifically and to enhance the quality and consistency of the data for a better findings. Third part of discussion is on data analysis, data interpretation, and drawing inferences. After the data is processed, how the processed data is analyzed, and how the interpretation is made. What is interpretation, how the interpretation is made, and what is inferences and how it is drawn based on the finding and interpretation. We'll be discussing with some of the examples also. Fourth part of presentation is on presentation of data, how the data in social science research, once it is collected, processed, analyzed, how it can be presented at the different uh, platforms for the benefit of the society, for the benefit of the community, for the benefit of the different stakeholders. We will be discussing in brief. And my last part of presentation is on the discussion. Whatever I'm going to share my experiences with you. If any queries or any sorts of discussion is welcome at the end of the presentation. Let us begin the first part of presentation, that is data processing in social science research. It is one of the vital phase of research in social science, like research. We know the term research is made with two subterms, re and search. Re means again, search means searching for the answers to the questions or solution to the problems. So this research activity will be conducted again and again for the finding answers to the new questions and the solution to the new problems. And any research, particularly in social science research, begins with selection of a research topic. Research topic is chosen by the researcher, whether it is academic research or it is professional research. The topic of research is chosen by the researcher based on the interest, need, and necessity and significance of the topic. So once the topic is chosen, the practical steps of doing research will be collecting the related literature from the reputed journal articles from the library, maybe an edited book or some reports like that. So by collecting articles, the researcher is expected to do an extensive review. And by doing review of literature, researcher is expected to develop conceptualization of the topic he or she has chosen. Besides conceptualization, the researcher is expected to identify the research lacunas. Research lacunas are nothing but limitations, research gaps. This identification of research gaps is very, very important in any social science research for having, for establishing significance of the research study. In order to identify a new question, a new problem, what questions and what problems are studied by earlier researcher is to be known by the researcher. We do not do review of literature and then do not understand what issues are studied by earlier researchers, we will not be able to understand what are the aspects unexplored or partially explored by the earlier researchers. So what I was mentioning about research lacuna, research gap is nothing but the unexplored or partially explored areas in the area of research that we are interested to do our research. By doing review of literature, we will be able to identify research gap. So once the research gaps are identified, based on that research objectives are framed. Based on the research objectives, research design is chosen, and then based on the objectives and research design, uh, in order to collect the primary data, research tools are uh, developed. So once the research tools are developed, after that we need to go to field for collecting the primary data. from the respondents. So after collecting the primary data from the respondents, in other words, after doing our fieldwork, the next practical steps in social science research, what we need to do is data processing. So this is a very important steps in social science research, and this data processing should be done very systematically and scientifically for maintaining the quality of the data. Data processing is required or essential in the empirical studies. Empirical studies are the studies which are field based. So when we are collecting data from the respondents, from the households, from the communities, from the field, in such studies, data processing is required because it is one of the practical steps done with the empirical studies. And the data processing is not required in the historical studies. That is what we need to understand. Data processing is related to primary data. So when we are collecting data by doing field work, we will be collecting data from the respondents through the techniques of interview, through the techniques of observation, through the techniques of case studies, focused group discussion, etc. etc. So this data collected by the researcher for the first time from the respondents is called as primary data, and data processing is something to do with the primary data only, not the secondary data, because secondary data is already pre-processed or pre-purified. So the question of processing is arise only in case of the primary data. The data collected from the respondents through fieldwork will be a raw data. This is a very, very important aspect social science researchers need to know. So when we are collecting data through fieldwork from the respondents, what data we collect either through interview or observation or any other techniques of data collection, the data what we collect is called as raw data. It is called raw data because it is not purified. Raw data is the data which will have possibilities of having some errors in the primary data we have collected. So while collecting data, due to some human errors or some unusual errors, there are possibilities of recording the data with certain errors. So any data collected from the field which is not processed is called raw data. So when we use raw data with certain errors and omissions, such data cannot be processed and used as it is because raw data will affect the quality of the data. Let me give an example. When we, for the purpose of drinking water, when the water is used from the outside sources, the water available in the river or any pond is not a purified data. It is called raw water. Why? Because there are possibilities of having certain contamination in the unprocessed water. Therefore, when we get the water in our through municipality in our uh, water tap, we do not use it for the drinking purpose as it is. Nowadays, nobody is using municipal water. Everybody is bringing water from the purifiers. Why we make use of the purifier? Purification is required to remove the contamination present in the water. If the raw water is consumed without purification, it is going to affect our health. We are likely to get some illness. So, therefore, just like that, the data collected from the field by the researchers is a raw data because it will have certain errors. Because of those errors, if those errors are not removed, it is likely to affect the quality of the data. Therefore, data processing is very, very important. When the data is collected from the field, it will be raw data, and raw data requires purification. Data processing is nothing but rectification of the errors and omissions present in the research tools. So I was mentioning about raw data or the primary data. Where primary data is present? Primary data is present in the research tools. We use different research tools depending upon the nature of the study, nature of respondent, and availability of the time. So if you are using an interview schedule, and if we collect data from the respondents, in the data collected, the field interview schedules will have certain errors and omissions. So this step data processing is removing those errors present in the research field in research tools and omissions for enhancing the quality of the data. Data processing is the purification of raw data for enhancing quality and consistency. So data processing is removing errors and omissions present in the tool. This processing helps to purify the data. Purify the data is nothing but removing the errors present in the research tools, whether it is interview schedule or it is questionnaire or it is psychometric scales or any type of research tool. The errors present in the research tools is removed. That is what is purification. Why this processing is important? Because by doing purification, by removing errors in the primary data, we will be able to enhance the quality, and we will also able to maintain consistency in the data. So if there is no quality and consistency in the data, the findings what we are going to get will not be useful, will not be scientific. So to maintain quality in any social science research, using proper research tools, proper research techniques, and data processing is a must. If the proper procedures are not followed, then we will be deviating from the systematic approach and scientific approach. So what I'm trying to say here is that data processing is one of the very, very scientific steps in social science research, through which we will try to remove the errors present in the research tools. And by removing the errors, by purification of the raw data, we will be enhancing the quality of the data, and we will be able to maintain the consistency in the primary data. Processing is required mostly with the quantitative data. In fact, the processing is required with the qualitative data also. In most of the cases, majority of the cases, processing is required with the quantitative or quantification of the data. Now, one more important aspect here we need to understand is that uh, data processing cannot be done only electronically. Data processing is to be done both manually as well as electronically. That's very important. Uh, for example, there is something like data editing. So data editing cannot be done electronically. Data editing requires to be done manually. And there are some sub steps of data processing which can be done both manually as well as electronically. For example, tabulation, drawing the tables. Tables can be drawn by using different statistical softwares like SPSS. Tables can also be drawn without using computer, without using any electronic device. Tables can also be drawn manually. So as a researchers, we must have the knowledge of processing the data, like how to do process the data manually as well as electronically. So we should know uh, drawing tables manually as well as drawing tables electronically by using different softwares in the computer. So the knowledge of manual calculation or manual drawing of the diagrams in tables and different statistical tests is a must for doing electronic data processing without any errors. Now let us move to second uh, part of the presentation, which is the core aspect we need to understand. I was mentioning in my previous slide that data processing, though it is one of the important steps of social science research, there are some sub steps involved in this particular step. Let us understand what are those sub steps involved in data processing. The first step of data processing is data editing. So, what is data editing? Data editing is nothing but removing the errors in the form of errors or omissions in the research tools. There are usually 5 types of errors found in the research tools. And data editing is nothing but removing all those 5 types of errors for enhancing the quality and consistency of the primary data. The second step of data processing is data classification. So we know the concept of question, the concept of variable, and types of variables. So there are different types of questions. We call the questions like open-ended questions, closed-ended questions, multiple answered questions. And from a statistical point of view, also we classify questions into different categories like nominal, ordinal, categorical, and all that. So in research tool, particularly when we make use of the interview schedules or semi-structured interview schedule, there are questions like open-ended questions and multiple answered questions. With such type of questions, when we get the answers, the classification is a must. For example, in most of the survey research, social science research, when we are collecting data from the respondents, from the households, there will be one question related to their understanding socio-economic background, like what is the annual income of the families. So if your sample is like 500, all the 500 families will give their annual family income differently. So we will get 500 different annual incomes. So if we collect this actual incomes of the 500 families, uh, if we do not classify those 500 incomes, then we will not be able to give a proper uh, meaning to it. So classification is required for better understanding of the some of the quantitative as well as qualitative answers given by the respondents. And the third steps in data processing is coding or quantification. So coding is nothing but giving numerical values or some other values. So converting the qualitative answers in the form of quantitative in the form of numbers and alphabets is nothing but quantification. So this is also one of the important sub steps of data processing. So there is a sequence. First, we have to edit the answers present in the research tools. Then we have to classify the questions, particularly open-ended questions, multiple answered questions like that. And then the classified answers need to be given coding numbers. If we want to make use of the computers, then we need to give the codes because computer understands only codes. So for that purpose, this quantification or coding is one of the very important steps in doing data processing. The fourth sub steps of data processing is preparation of the coding key. Coding key is nothing but description of the number of variables or questions, name of the variables or questions, answers received for the respective variables or questions, and the coding code given to each answers of each question. So this coding key needs to be prepared by the researchers for doing proper data processing. Without coding key, it is very difficult to transform the quantitative data present in the research tools onto the computer or on uh, the manual master chart. So the fifth steps of data processing is preparation of master chart. Preparation of master chart is done manually as well as it is done electronically. So master chart can be prepared in Excel sheets. Master chart can be prepared in the SPSS spreadsheets. So master chart is nothing but a chart having all the quantitative answers of all the questions of all the respondents. For example, if a study is there for 500 respondents and each respondent is asked 10 questions, then every respondent will give answers to the 10 questions. So 500 people answer to each respondent answer to 10 questions. So there will be altogether 5,000 answers. So preparation of master chart is nothing but master chart will have the answers of all the 5,000 answers in quantitative form, in the form of numbers, codes. So that is what is master chart. And the sixth sub step of data processing is planning or preparation of analysis. This is a very important aspects to be taken care by the social science research. Uh, I have seen research scholars and principal investigators of different research projects. Many of the researchers, social science researchers, do not plan or prepare their plan of analysis. Plan of analysis is nothing but depending upon the research design, depending upon the research objectives, what type of variables are to be drawn in univariate tables, what type of variables are to be cross-tabulated, what type of statistical tests are to be made between different variables. This requires to be planned before we make any analysis. So without a plan of analysis, data processing cannot be done scientifically, which need to be kept in mind by the researchers. And seventh sub-step of data processing is tabulation. So tabulation is nothing but arranging a huge data, that is numerical data, into tables and columns. Tabulation gives us a clear picture of the huge data. Therefore, tabulation, I was mentioning, tabulation can be done manually. Also, tabulation is done using computers. So these are the 7 important steps involved in data processing. Data processing is not one particular activity. Data processing involves these 7 type of sub activities, sub steps, which need to be followed one after other to maintain the quality in the data we have collected from the respondents. Now let us understand these steps of data processing one by one in detail. So data editing is the first practical sub-steps of the step data processing. So in this first step, what is done is the empirical data or primary data collected is examined. The raw data which is not processed is examined by the researcher. Editing is a process of examining the collected raw data. So raw data is examined by the researcher. How the raw data is examined? Because the data is present in the research tools used by the researcher. So it is a rectification of the errors and omissions present in the research tool. So examining the raw data is nothing but going through the collected tools. It is interview schedule or questionnaire or any other tools. So once the field work is over, data collection is over, the researcher should go through each and every tool whether the answers sought for each question by the researcher are correct or not. If it is a interview schedule, it is filled by the researcher through the technique of interview. So in the course of interview and recording the answers, some of the errors or omissions might have done by the researcher. If it is a questionnaire, it is filled by the respondents, and the respondent might have answered all the questions, or respondents might not have answered all the questions, might not have given complete answers to the questions in the tool. So therefore, researcher is supposed to go through each research tool and each question's answer, whether it is properly written or not, recorded or not. That is what is data editing. Data editing involves uh, correcting 5 types of common errors. Usually, if we take any research study based tools, in every research study, when the data are collected, whether it is a doctoral data or it is a any research project based data, uh, when we uh, go for processing it and while editing, uh, usually 5 types of errors are seen in the research tools. Now let us understand in data editing what all those 5 types of errors and how those errors are to be corrected before going to the next sub step of data processing. The first type of uh, error is blank or no entries. When we uh, take research tools, interview schedules, after the data collection, when we go on glancing on the different questions, different pages, we may come across with some of the questions they remained unanswered, they remained blank, it is not entered. It happens because in social science research, when we go for a field work, Sometimes there may not be favorable environment. Sometimes due to human error also, we forget to collect answers to all the questions. If some of the questions are not answered, then it is going to affect the sampling framework. For example, if there is a study and the sample size is 221, and when you are glancing the answers got to all those 221 interschedules, if you find for some of the questions uh, answers are not taken. If such blank entries are found more than one, like 5, 6, 7, then for that particular question sampling size will come down from 221 to less. So therefore, researcher has to take very much care while editing the data and see that whether there are any blank entries. If there are any blank entries, the researcher is supposed to take those interschedules, see whose data it is, go to the same respondent and collect it and fill those unfilled entries. So this is a very, very important aspect of data editing. Now, the second type of errors usually found in the research tools is incomplete entries. So incomplete entries means there will be the answer will be there, but the answer will not be adequate, or complete answer will not be there. For example, there is a question like, what is your annual income? In some of the research tools, particularly when we collect data by using field investigators, if the researcher himself has gone to field and collected, then he will collect the data. If there is data is collected with the help of somebody else, what happens is they may record only the monthly income or income of only one person. Because when the question is family income, complete family income should be recorded. I have seen in research tools where only monthly income is recorded. When the monthly income is recorded in one tool and annual income is recorded in all other tools, such data cannot be used as it is. So that data needs to be completed. If it can be completed by the researcher himself without going to field, it should be completed. If there is a need to go to field, the researcher must go to the respondent and collect the complete information. So this second type of errors need to be taken care to be rectified by the researcher while editing the data in the research tools. Third type of error usually seen in the research tools is wrong entries. Wrong entries are the entries which are not relevant to the question. Question is something, answer is something. There is no matching of the there is no relation between the answer and question. So while in the process of collecting the data, some of the questions are entered wrongly. For example, I was in practically seen many of the tools in the research, mega research, big kind of research projects. So in one of the tool, what happened is question number, the question is, what is your age? And the answer is written as 1,50,000. 1,50,000 is the income, which is supposed to be written in front of income, which is written in front of the age. So like that, there will be a possibilities of recording wrong answers. Maybe the answers of other question or some irrelevant questions, irrelevant answers might have been recorded. So the researcher during this first sub step of data editing should correct these type of wrong entries usually made by the researchers. The fourth type of error found in research tools is logically inconsistent entries. So when we make use of any research tools will have certain questions based on the research objectives. And when there are a set of questions, there will be a certain link between one question with other question. So while recording the answers, the researcher must take care the logical link between the question and link between the answers. For example, question number 10 is are you married? Question number 10 is are you married? Question number 11 is if yes, how many children you have? Question number 12 is are you practicing family planning methods? If the question the answer to the question number 10 is like no, are you married? The answer is no. And 11th question, do you have how many children? If yes, do you have how many children? Not applicable. And question number 12, are you practicing family planning? If it is answer is written as yes, then it will be a logically inconsistent answer and inconsistent data. So these types of errors are also found largely, particularly when we collect data, depending on field investigators, they will not see this logical link and simply record so casually. So researcher must take care of correcting this type of logically inconsistent entries in the research tools. The fifth type of error is unclear handwriting. In when the interview schedule we make use, researcher has to record the answers, responses given by the respondent in the process of interview. So some of the investigators, the handwriting will not be clear. They just write like a prescription of the doctor. And after data collection, they go back. They will not be there with the researcher. And if the answers are written not clearly, which nobody can understand other than who has written it, and the person is not with you while processing the data, it is difficult to understand what is the answer. So therefore, it is the responsibility of the researcher to record all the entries, all the answers properly and clearly so that it can be used for the uh, uh, next step of research. So this unclear handwriting, if it is not, if a recorded data or data is not understandable, that has to be understood by the researcher. Then only that data can be used. Once these 5 types of errors are corrected in the first sub-step of data processing, that is data editing, next one more important aspect we need to keep in our mind is we should give the serial numbers to the research tools. I was giving example of a study of 221 respondents. So if the sample size is 221, there will be 221 interview schedules. So once the data editing is done, then the researcher must give serial number to all the 221 research tools with using pen, not pencil, at the right top of the top corner of the first page of the interview schedule. This is a very important steps to be followed at data editing stage. If we do not give serial number and we go on entering the data into computer, if there is some if there are any wrong entries or if we need any uh, clarification from the research tool, which from which research tool the data is entered in the master sheet or computer, we will not be able to track. So in order to track the particular research tool from where the clarification is required, in order to trace a specific research tool from data need to be verified and corrected in the master chart. See, giving serial number is very, very important. So if we do not give serial number and if the tools we mix, then it will become mess and there will be no meaning for processing the data in the next step. And then uh, one more important aspect here is this first step is advisable to be done by the researcher while uh, doing fieldwork itself. So when you are in the field, before you complete your fieldwork, before you collect the data from all the respondents and come back, if the editing is done in the field itself, one of the advantage is that you are in the field, and if any data is missing and that data need to be retried, need to be collected from the field, from the respondent, you can go back and collect. So if you are field in the faraway places, you cannot, once you come back from the field, it is difficult for you to go back to the field and collect that missing data. And if you are not able to collect the missing data, your sampling framework will be affected, your quality of the data will be affected, data will be affected, and then such studies will not be so useful for the society because it will be uh, ignorance of the systematic approach and scientific approach. The second sub-step of data processing is classification. Let us understand what is classification. Classification is nothing but classifying the answers received from the respondents in qualitative form to the open-ended questions or multiple answer questions. Classification is required with the variables or questions that are open-ended. Open-ended questions are the questions where there will be no option to the respondent. It will be open. You ask the question to 221 respondents, they may give 221 different answers, even more than that. If it is a multiple answer, there will be more than one answers. So in such cases, classification need to be made for understanding what exactly the respondents want to say about that particular question. So here one example is given, income. I was mentioning earlier also. If there are 221 respondents, there will be 221 incomes. So if you put it as it is, 221 income, you will not be able to understand what it is. So if you make some classification up to 50,000, 51,000 to 1 lakh, 1 lakh, 1 to 2 lakh, or more than 2 lakh, like that, if we make some 2, 3, 4 categories of classification, then we will be able to understand something. We will be able to give some meaning to such answers and data. So therefore, classification is very important in data processing, and it is one of the second important sub-steps. Classification is not required if we use a tool where pre-classified or closed-ended questions are used. So usually the popular tool what we use in social science research or social work research is interview schedules. So depending upon the type of questions present in the tool, we classify interview schedules into three. One is structured interview schedule, where all the questions will be closed-ended questions. Closed-ended questions are the questions, the answers of the questions are already known to the researcher, and answers are given in front of the question uh, for the respondent to answer any of the given answers. And second type of interview schedule is a semi-structured interview schedule. Semi-structured interview schedule is the tool which will have the combination of both close-ended and open-ended questions. And in this type of tools, classification is required. If it is a structured interview schedule, classification is not required because classification is already present in the tool. And there is a third type of interview schedule called unstructured interview schedule. So unstructured interview schedule are the interview schedules which will have almost all the open-ended questions. In such cases also, classification is required. Classification is also required with multiple answer questions. So there are some of the questions which will have more than one answer. In such cases, if we do not make classification, we will not be able to present the data in a systematic way. For example, how many languages you know? Different respondents, will answer different. That they know different languages. Some of the respondents may know only one language. Some of the respondents may know more than two languages. Some of the respondents know more than two languages, like that. So, in order to present those answers in a systematic way, a classification is required. If we use the classification technique, we will be able to give a proper meaning to such uh, answers. And classification is also required to the psychometric scales. In most of the uh, social science research done on the attitudes, behavior, aspirations, and all that, we use psychometric scales. So when we make psychometric scales, every standardized scale will have its manual. So in the manual, complete details are given about the validity, reliability, and scoring pattern of the scale. So usually scales are the standardized scales are nothing but list of questions, but the answers will be in scaling. And every question will be given some uh, scoring. So how to make total scoring of individual respondent, there the guideline will be given. So once the individual scores are calculated uh, in the standardized scales, there will be some classification. For example, life satisfaction index. Life satisfaction index has got 20 items. And for these 20 items, scorings are given. So once the life satisfaction index is administered with the respondent, and the respondent answers to all the 20 questions based on the answers given by the respondent, for individual item, scoring is given. After that, consolidating the scores of all the 20 items, one figure will be there. And that figure will be put into the classified form, whether dissatisfied or least satisfied or satisfied, like that. So classification is also required with the psychometric or standardized when we make use of the standardized scales. The third important substep of data processing is quantification or quantification is nothing but giving or allotting numerical values to the classified responses. Question is there, answers are there, and answers are classified, whether it is pre-classified or classified through classification. Those classified answers should be given in numerical values, because to give a meaning to it in computer understands only codes. So therefore, quantification is a very important steps in data processing, because with the help of quantification only, we can uh, uh, convert the qualitative answers into quantitative form. Coding refers to the process of assigning numerical values to the questions or variables. So, as I was mentioning, every question we get answer. To the answers, we give codes. For example, what is your gender? Male 1, female 2, or transgender 3. Like that. It is also called as quantification, as it covers descriptive data into the quantitative. The qualitative or descriptive data is converted into quantitative data with the help of quantification. And this quantification depends on the type of question or variable present in the research tool. If there are close-ended questions, quantification is also done. If there are open-ended questions, classification is made, and then the coding is done. If there is a standardized scale or psychometric scale is there, the scores of the psychometric scales are classified, and then coding is given. Usually, there are three types of coding pattern used in social science research. One is numerical coding. Answers are given the codes in the form of number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. Any number of answers. If the answers are 3, 1, 2, 3. If the answers are 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that, it is given. And there is also practice of giving alphabetic code like ABC. If manual data processing or manual tabulation is done, alphabetic coding is used. Of course, numerical codes can also be used for the manual tabulation. Zero coding. There is something called zero coding. It is given to the questions to which the respondents has not answered or not given any responses, or the questions not applicable. So there will be in the research tool, there will be some questions which will not be applicable. For example, just now I was discussing or mentioning and giving example about the questions. If question number 10 is, are you married? And question number 11 is, how many children you have? Question number 12 is, are you practicing family planning method? So if the question answers to the question number 10, are you married, is no, then the 11th question, how many children you have, should not be applicable. Are you practicing family planning, also should not be applicable. So in such cases, so if such respondent pool is there, in such cases, what we do is we give 0 as not applicable or no response. Now, the fourth sub-step in data processing is preparation of the coding key is very, very important. So coding key, as I was mentioning, coding key is a description of the variables or questions present in the research tool. So this is one simple model of coding key used for one of my studies. So it has got 5 columns giving description about the serial number of the questions in the research tool, question number given in the research tool, name of the question, then the answers got to the questions or variables, and the code to be assigned or to be given to the answers we got to different questions. So here I have taken 6 different types of questions. The first question is what name of the taluka. So in a study, the data is collected from the 2 talukas. So one taluka is given. It is a closed-ended question because it was already known from which talukas I am going to collect the data. And taluka one is given. First taluka is given number one, and the second taluka is given number two as a code. So while uh, transforming the answers present in the research tools in the coded form, this coding key is very important. If we do not prepare this coding key, and the tool is like semi-structured or unstructured, it is not pre-coded, the transforming the quantified answers of the research tools to the master chart will be very difficult. In fact, it is unscientific. The coding key is a must if in your interview schedule or in your research tool, open-ended questions are there, multiple answer questions are there, and pre-classified or pre-coded questions, or if it is not there. So coding key should be used. And then second question is a village. From each taluka, one village has been taken, given the codes. So third question is age. Age here, it is taken actual. Some of the variables we should take actual, because if you take actual age or actual income, uh, mean value, mean age or income can be calculated. So then gender, and the fifth serial number sixth and was mentioning about the classification. So respondents are 221, minimum age is 60, maximum age is 102. So to give a meaning to these answers collected from 221 respondents, 221 ages, this simple classification is made. In Indian context, elderly are classified into three cohorts: young, old, 60 to 70, old, 70 to 80, very old, 81 and above. And then codes are given as 1, 2, 3. And then caste categories, which is a central government pattern. And the numbers are given. So what I'm trying to say here is that in any social science research, it is uh, important to prepare coding key, and then you go for the entering the data into computer or preparation of the master chart. So this is one model of a master chart. Master chart can be prepared on a drawing sheet also. Earlier, when people were not dependent or not comfortable with the computer, master charts used to be prepared manually. So master chart is nothing but number of respondents, answer to number of questions are given in the quantitative form. For example, I have conducted a study of 221 respondents. You can see at the left first column 1, 2, 3. So this will be entered up to 1 to 221. And assume that in every respondent is asked about some 15 questions. So this Q0, Q01, Q02, Q03, Q04, like Q0, Q11.4, these are the questions asked to the respondents. And then you can see first number, 1. First column, 1 is respondent number 1. And respondent number 1, what answer he has given to question 01 is given in the coded form. Respondent number 1, what he has answered to question 02 is given in the quantified form. Like that, master chart is the chart which will have answers given by all the respondent to all the questions in the quantitative form at one place. Therefore, it is called master chart. So earlier, manually it is prepared. Nowadays, we prepare master chart using Excel sheet. Master chart can also be prepared in SPSS sheet. So this is the example of one SPSS sheet. And next substep of data processing is planar preparation of analysis. So planar preparation of analysis is very important in any social science research, because this determines the outline of the data. I see many research scholars draw 100 of tables, but those tables will not be related to objectives of the study. This happens because they do not make plan of analysis. So plan of analysis or preparation of analysis is very, very important sub steps of data processing should be taken care by the researcher for doing research scientifically. Basically, this plan or preparation of analysis is based on four aspects, four parameters. One is what type of research design is used by the scholar or researcher. Depending upon the type of research design, plan of analysis is made. Depending upon the research objectives, plan of analysis is made. If there is an objective saying to compare between gender and education qualification, then there should be a plan of analysis that the variable gender should be cross-tabulated with the variable education qualification, cross-tabulated, and maybe chi-square test, some other test can be planned to make to see the association between those two variables. And then plan of analysis also depends on the hypothesis, because hypotheses are the logical assumptions made on par with the research objectives, and there's the tentative statements to be tested based on the primary data. So therefore, to test the hypothesis related tests are to be made. For that, while making the planner preparation, we keep in our mind not only design and objectives but also hypothesis. So then the fourth parameter is variable design. So in every research, we define which variable is independent one and which variable is dependent in our study. So the set of independent variables and dependent variables defined in our study will also help in making plan of analysis. It is also listing the variables to draw univariate tables. So in a study, suppose there are 50 questions in the tool, means 50 variables are there. So out of 50 variables, which variable or which question to be drawn in the form of univariate table? That number of those questions or variables should be listed. Which numbers of questions should be drawn univariate tables. List of independent and dependent variables to be cross-tabulated. So which number independent variable should to be cross-tabulated with which number of dependent variable? That those numbers should be planned. For example, question number 2 is gender and question number 21 is education. 2 and 21 should be planned in the plan of analysis to draw a cross table or bivariate tables. And the types of statistical tests to be applied. So when we plan, especially drawing univariate tables or multivariate tables, then we also make plan of application of the statistical test. If we want to see the association between gender and education, first we need to make cross tabulation between these two variables, and then we should apply see the association a chi-square test. So, which tables to draw univariate tables, which tables to draw a diagram or some other diagrams, which table to draw graphs, and which variables to be drawn univariate and cross tables. This plan of action should be done before going to the analysis. So the type of analysis to be made is done in different forms. One is using percentages, very common, but not the better option of analyzing the data. It is not advisable to use percentage to analyze the data because percentages are already present in the table. And if we use percentage for analysis, it is nothing but repetition of the like what is present in the table. So use of proportions. So use of proportions is very much recommendable, advisable way of analyzing the data. Internationally, international researchers make use of this, analysis. Third one is use of statistical tests. Depending upon the design, objectives, hypothesis, and variable design, statistical tests are applied. And use of qualitative data, more particularly in social work research, we should complement the qualitative data in the form of presenting case studies, uh, presenting the summaries of the focused group discussions in complementary to the quantitative data. Now the seventh sub step of that is last step of doing data processing is tabulation. All of us know what is tabulation. Tabulation is nothing but presenting the huge or mass data in a concise or logical order. 221 respondents answered about their marital status. And if we do not arrange those 221 answers in a concise and logical order, we will not be able to understand about marital status. So, therefore, tabulation is nothing but arranging huge data into rows and columns so that we can understand what is the overall status of the all the respondents about different parameters or variables studied in a particular aspect. So tabulation is also process of summarizing the data and displaying the same in the compact form. So based on the objective and type of study, type of analysis is done, a type of tables are done. Tabulation is done both manually as well as electronically or mechanically. So I was mentioning in the beginning itself uh, that data processing is not sole electronically. Electronically, all the data processing is not possible. Manual aspects are also included, such as data editing and all that. So tabulation is done both manually and mechanically. And this is one example of basically there are three types of tables we use in social science research. One is univariate table, second one is bivariate tables, and third one is multivariate tables. Univariate tables are also called simple tables. So this is an example of simple table or univariate table, where the description of the marital status of 221 respondents is given. So this is the example of bivariate table. So this bivariate table is also called as cross table. So there will be cross tabulation between the independent variable and dependent variable. So two variables are taken here: gender and life satisfaction of the respondents. So in cross tabulation, there are three types of percentages are calculated. One is total percentage, usually used in the descriptive, usually used in the exploratory research design, giving description of the phenomena. And then there are second and third type of percentages: column percentage and row percentage. So in this table, this all the three types of percentages are given. So if you see this gender and male, you can see there are three percentages. So the first percentage is column percentage, second percentage is row percentage, third percentage is the total percentage. So if you want to compare between male and female, then this column percentage is required. If you want to compare between the satisfied, least satisfied, and dissatisfied, then this row percentages are required. If this comparison is not required, only description is required, then we go for total percentage of the tables. So in many research studies, the research scholars, in many of the studies, they do not, knowing this logic of using percentage, calculating percentage for the cross tabulation, they make use of this. So this need to be taken care by the researchers. So this is the example of the multivariate table. So this is one table in one of my studies. It is used. So this one table is the summary of 42 cross tables. 42 cross tables and their chi-square values are condensed into one table. So multivariable tables are the tables which will have three or more than three variables. So here you can see 14 variables plus 3, 14 plus 3, 17 variables comparison is made in this one table. Now let us come to the third part of our presentation, our discussion, that is data analysis, interpretation, and drawing inferences. So now let us understand what is data analysis. So once of complete data processing is done, and by using a computer, tables are drawn. Now we have to explain logically what a particular table speaks about the phenomena studied about respondents. So it can be a table, it can be a diagram, it can be a statistical value calculated, or it can be anything. So as a researcher, we have to explain, analyze the link between the phenomena, the trends that is present in the tables or diagrams or statistical value. So the it is data analysis is nothing but the statistical language, converting statistical language into a common man's language. So when we explain any table, any layman should be able to understand what phenomena is present, or what can be seen from the table. So type of analysis depends on the type of study undertaken, is particularly the design. I was mentioning what type of analysis to be made, determined by basically type of design, objectives, hypothesis. These are the important factors that influence. Then it is effective to analyze data using proportions instead of percentages. So I have seen many of the reports, especially doctoral dissertations. Analysis is made using percentages, but it is not advisable to make analyze data using percentages, because percentages do not give concrete understanding of the findings or phenomena present in the tables. So there are many other techniques of analyzing the data. So one of the popular internationally known technique is using of proportions. So if the proportions are used, proportions give better picture of the findings in the tables than percentages. So percentages, since it is present in the table, it makes no difference if it is repeated again in the analysis. So how proportions are used? If it is 25%, instead of calling 25%, we call it as 1/4. If it is 80%, instead of calling 80%, we call it as 4/5. If it is 10%, we call it as 1/10. So if it is 50%, we call it as half. So calling 50% and calling half, or calling 25% or 1/4, makes a lot of difference to understand what is present in the table. So in social sciences, most commonly recommendable technique of analyzing the data is proportions. So in beside that, we have different types of analysis. Descriptive analysis, usually made in exploratory studies. Inferential statistical analysis or inferential analysis used in descriptive and experimental and intervention research studies. Qualitative analysis is also used in different types of studies. So, what is data interpretation? Data interpretation is giving a logical explanation to the finding in a table. So, the researcher, based on his insights gained during the fieldwork, based on his reading review of literature, based on his clarity about the problem or phenomena studied, he gives the logical explanation. For example, in a study, like why when we make a comparison between gender and the number of students enter to social work, usually it is seen that men are more in social work education than female. Then, as a researcher, logical reasons should be given why men are more, why women are not, women are less. So that kind of interpretation is required to be given. And it is also like giving a continuity to our finding to the earlier studies. So suppose we find that elderly in unorganized sector are not satisfied uh, in with their present life. There may be such similar findings in the earlier studies which we come across in the review of literature. So while giving the analysis and while giving the logical interpretation for the phenomena present in the table, we should also give supportive evidences. Similar studies also found that the elderly in the unorganized sector found to have less life satisfaction or not satisfied with their life. Like that, the interpretation is made. So, in most of the research studies, this part will be missing. We simply make analysis using percentage. We do not give logical explanation for why something is more and why something is less. And the third part of any analysis and interpretation is drawing inferences. Inferences is nothing but drawing conclusion from the from each table or each statistical test. So for drawing inferences, the basis will be the findings or major findings. Uh, it is nothing but concluding what the table is speaking about. And this also helps, drawing inferences also helps to test the hypothesis, because the logical assumptions what we made in the methodology chapter need to be tested. So in this while analyzing the data, while giving interpretation to the data, we draw the conclusions, we draw the inferences. Then based on that, the hypotheses are also tested, and every inference will be a major findings of the study. Every conclusion of the table will be a major finding of the study. So this is one of the examples, like of a univariate table or simple table, how data analysis is made. So every data analysis, every table will have three parts. First part will be analysis using proportions. We will explain what is found in the table. So you can see uh, a majority of the elderly, about 3/5. So 58.5 is about 3/5, that is 60%, are least satisfied with the present life, and dissatisfied are 26.7. It is called as more than 1/4, that is more than 25%. Like that, it is analyzed. Second part is the giving the logical explanation why majority of the, except 14.5%, rest of them all are either least satisfied or dissatisfied. Why it is like that? That explanation is given. Logical explanation is given based on the fieldwork insights, based on the understanding got from the review of literature, and it is also complementing with giving a case study saying why it is like that. And the last paragraph is the inferences. The inferences is drawn from this table. It will be like this. It is clear from the above table that more than 4/5, that is more than 80% of the elderly are either least satisfied or dissatisfied. This is how the inferences are drawn. But every thesis, every research report should in its data interpretation, data analysis, this three parts should be there. This is one more example for the cross tabulation or bivariate tables. So this cross tabulation is made between two variables. One is socio-economic background of the respondents, and the other one is life satisfaction. Independent variable is socio-economic background. Dependent variable is life satisfaction. So here compare this again using same proportions. First part is analysis is made. Second part logical interpretation is made, and then there is one addition. You can see after the table, under the table, that chi-square values are given. So chi-square value, degree of freedom, significant level, and result, whether it is significant or not significant. So in the last part, inferences is also drawn here. Now, the last part of my presentation is presentation of the data. So once the data are, data processed, it is presented in the form of tables, is presented in the form of statistical test. It is analyzed, interpretation is made, inferences are drawn, and complete that report is ready. Then how do we present? So the research reports, whether it is academic reports or other professional reports of professional research organizations, they are presented in the form of research reports. And research any research reports are also presented in the form of research articles to influence on the policy makers, planners, developmentalists, government, bureaucrats, etc. And research reports can also be presented in the community programs to bring or to make awareness and make sensitize the community members. And research reports can also be presented at the different professional platforms, like in the form of it could be in conferences, seminars, workshops, symposias. In such platforms, research the data is presented. So with this, I stop my uh, discussion on very important topics of social science research, that is data processing in social sciences. So if there are any uh, queries or any comments or any questions are there, it is welcome.